Once upon a time, in a land long since burnt to ash, there lived a young princess who loved her kingdom. That's right, guess what we're doing? We are starting our reread of Throne of Glass. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Heidi. I love to read, full-time corporate girly, overtime book girly, part-time YouTube girly. It might not sound crazy to you. It sounds a little crazy to me because it is just the beginning of 2025 and I finished Throne of Glass for the first time ever in 2024. I have a lot of reasons for wanting to reread this book and I'm very, very excited to be doing it. I'm going to switch up a couple things and I honestly think it's just going to change the game for me when it comes to this series. I have been wanting to do my reread of Throne of Glass pretty much since I ended the series the first time, and not for the reason that I think most people experience the need to reread this series. When I went into Throne of Glass, I made a fatal decision. I went into Throne of Glass after ACOTAR and Crescent City. If you are watching this and you've not read any of these books, two things for you. One, this vlog will have spoilers for this entire series, so I don't recommend watching it until you're done reading, but before you leave, I do not recommend reading Throne of Glass last in the Maasverse. If anything, if I could go back and change one thing about my life that really doesn't matter, but like to me, if I could just change something completely inconsequential, it would be that I didn't read Throne of Glass first. I wish I had read Throne of Glass first, ACOTAR second, and Crescent City third. Unfortunately, I was off in La La Land and didn't do that, and I just jumped on the ACOTAR train without doing any research. After going into ACOTAR, I immediately jumped into Crescent City, which I really, really enjoyed Crescent City. Total different change of pace, wasn't what I was expecting. I actually had a great time. However, ACOTAR was heavy on the kind of medieval fantasy feel. Crescent City was obviously urban fantasy and very high fantasy, almost sci-fi. And then jumping into Throne of Glass, I felt like I was running a mile a minute and then all of a sudden was like hard stop slowed to a crawl picking up this book for the first time because again, I went immediately from Crescent City into Throne of Glass. I do not recommend reading it that way. I haven't read ACOTAR for a couple years now and I'm ready to start my reread, but I knew that before I do that, I need to go back and do it right. I need to go back and do it as though I'm reading all of the SJM books for the very first time. Let's talk reading order real quick. I basically went off the reading order that I felt most people recommended before Sarah came out and said what reading order she recommended. And I was told if you want a really strong emotional impact, you read Throne of Glass first, because if you read this first and not Assassin's Blade first, I don't know, people just told me if you don't do it play by play, you'll have more of an emotional connection to the characters, where if you do it play by doing it completely chronologically and following the timeline of Celaena's life from like start to finish, I don't know. Whatever was recommended to me did not work at the end of the day. So I read Throne of Glass first, was so freaking bored out of my mind because again, I went from Crescent City to Throne of Glass. And then I did Crown of Midnight, which was arguably one of the worst books I had ever read. Please don't take offense to that. Again, this series was not what I was expecting going from Crescent City and ACOTAR to Throne of Glass. I didn't quite yet understand how young Sarah was when she wrote this series and how completely different it is from her other two books. I felt like ACOTAR and Crescent City were paced out very well, and Throne of Glass is definitely a slow burn. I'm not talking romance, I'm talking the plot is a slow burn, and I was not expecting that. It was slower than the first 90% of ACOTAR in my opinion, because we all know ACOTAR was a bit of a crawl until you got to the last 100 pages. However, so again, I went Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, which whoever told me to do that, I hope you step on Legos. I hope you step on Legos because that was just, who recommended that to me? I would never recommend that to anyone because then after Heir of Fire, I backtracked all the way to Assassin's Blade, which made absolutely no sense. It would have made sense to do Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, then Assassin's Blade because so much happens in Heir of Fire that's different from Crown of Midnight that going to Heir of Fire, backtracking, and then having to remember everything that happened in Heir of Fire was so confusing. And I didn't end up doing the tandem read. I'll be honest, actually, halfway through Queen of Shadows, I had just had such a bad reading experience of Throne of Glass that I almost DNF'd it. Yeah, that's I can't believe I'm saying that, but I did. It was just such an awful experience for the first 4 books. I am so glad I did not, but I'm just here to be honest with you. I did almost DNF Throne of Glass. Crazy. The things I didn't know. Okay, so that happened. God bless Elizabeth Evans because she saved me. She saved my Throne of Glass experience. I switched to the audiobook for the remainder of the series halfway through Queen of Shadows. First of all, if you haven't listened to the audiobook, even if you love to read, Elizabeth Evans' performance in Throne of Glass and Crescent City is top tier. I also heard that she's going back and redoing the ACOTAR audiobooks. I'm so excited. I don't need the ACOTAR audiobooks. I want the ACOTAR audiobooks and I will be listening to them 100%. I cannot wait. She is just such an incredible voice actress. So if you have not listened to those and you like audiobooks, her books are outstanding. But she really did save this series for me. I owe a lot to her because I would not have understood the hype. All that being said, because I did the audiobook, obviously I missed some things. I still cried my eyes out. I was like driving to work, listening to my audiobook. It got to the "you do not yield" part and I was donezo. I think I almost called in. I was not having a good time. But because I did the audiobook, I admittedly missed some things. And so between not reading the first 4 books in a correct order, it was honestly the most chaotic order that ever could have been recommended. And I don't understand why anybody would have said to read it in the order that I did. And then doing the audiobook for the last 4 books, I did not have the experience everyone else had. I'm ready to do it right. As of right now, my plan going into this reread is to read everything on the timeline in which it happened. So I am actually going to be starting with Assassin's Blade. And then I'm going to do Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire. I just genuinely think I'll have a good time doing that. And the reason I want to start with Assassin's Blade, even though for a first read, I actually don't recommend starting with Assassin's Blade. That might be controversial, but that is the one thing I think I did right in the series, was not reading Assassin's Blade first on the first read through. But the reason I'm doing it first is because I also plan to do the tandem read with Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms, which means everything is happening like exactly chronologically. And so it just makes sense to read the prequel of everything first. I do plan to do a reading of all of these books. I'm not going to do the audiobook. I'm honestly just kind of going in clean slate. I'm really excited. I noticed that some people who read Assassin's Blade first didn't realize how many Easter eggs were actually in Assassin's Blade. I'm so excited to start reading everything chronologically so I can go back and really just appreciate all the Easter eggs, appreciate the slowness of the plot developing. I also think I'm very excited to do this reread because I finally understand how Throne of Glass connects with her other universes. There are so many theories out there that I think are absolutely incredible, and there are so many theories that I think hold a lot of weight that people aren't necessarily talking about all the time. So what I'm going to do on this reread of the entire Maasverse is I'm starting with Throne of Glass, and I am going to annotate and tab up the whole series. And I'm going to do that for ACOTAR and Crescent City as well, because I really kind of want to put my tin hat on and really kind of dig into how all these universes connect, because we do know Sarah is working on a new book. Potentially, I think it's got to be ACOTAR. For some reason, she also did an interview where she said there was going to be another character from another universe that she was focusing on, and people thought maybe she was going to like add on another Throne of Glass book, which I think would just throw the entire fan base into absolute pandemonium. But I think we're pretty certain that the next book is going to be part of the ACOTAR series, which is awesome. But I want to go into that new book really having a solid foundation of understanding her whole universe and how it interconnects. I think at this point, her universe is getting so dense and her books are getting so dense. I mean, we all read Crescent City 3. If you don't understand how her upcoming books are connecting to her past books and other series, I don't think you're gonna have as great of a time. And I'm speaking from personal experience there. Crescent City 3, honestly, up front, I didn't think was that great. Like if I had just read Crescent City and none of her other books, I would have been like, what the absolute hell was that? That made no sense. Why are all these things happening that seem to have no context? But if you read ACOTAR, book 2 and book 3 make a lot of sense. If you didn't read ACOTAR, they would be extremely confusing. There's a lot of connections to Crescent City and Throne of Glass and Maeve and that whole thing. I do believe if you want to get into this universe, starting with this series first is the way to go, and that's why I'm here. I'm just gonna go in, clean slate, start from scratch. Honestly, I'm really just hoping that I have a better experience of this series. I think part of the reason I didn't like this book is like I had nobody to talk to about it. So I had nobody to kind of like help explain things, especially because I read the first 4 books in such a chaotic order. Nobody was there to be like, yeah, that doesn't make sense reading it in that order. Try it this way. Or yeah, I understand why you're a little confused. Here's kind of the context. Does that help? I didn't have anybody to do that for me. I'm excited to basically experience this series for the first time. I think reading it in a different order is literally going to make it feel like a whole different series. It's going to be a whole different experience for me. I genuinely just can't wait. I'm gonna go change and get into some comfy clothes because we need to start reading Assassin's Blade. Okay. I am back. I went and got changed and I got my book and my highlighters and everything. And of course for the reread, I felt like I only had one outfit option, and that was my Aelin Galathinius Fireheart t-shirt, which I think is so freaking cute. I love it. It's kind of like a band t-shirt. I don't know. I have a couple others. I've got one that's like the Bat Boys tour and it has all their like all the courts they're visiting on their tour. I have one that's the city of Valaris. I love my themed t-shirts. That's how you know I love this freaking universe. I wanted to show you something I just put together, and it has to do with like how I highlight the books. Normally I'll highlight in one color and I'll do 2 different colored tabs based off of like character switching or something like that. I'm changing it up a little bit with the Throne of Glass reread for a couple reasons. So obviously I have a ton of colors here. I put together like a little kind of like cheat sheet for how I'm going to annotate my book. So I have a ton of colors here. I really don't like doing this, but I feel like this is a special case because there are a lot of different things I want to make note of, not only in this series, but also my ACOTAR and my Crescent City books once I reread those. If all goes well, I plan to use this same key throughout all of the books. So I tried to at least choose colors that I don't absolutely hate. You know, they might not go with the book colors, but they'll make sense to me as I'm like going back and like connecting theories and everything. What I'm going to do is anything highlighted in gray is pertaining to the Volg, Asteria, or the Daglin. I feel like that was like a big connecting piece to these universes, and I'd like to start tying those pieces together a little bit more. Anything in pink is going to be a quote or a scene that I love or just enjoyed and had a good time, but wasn't necessarily like, I don't want to say it wasn't pivotal to the plot, but it wasn't like information giving necessarily. Blue is anything that's an important scene that helps push the plot forward. Anything in purple is going to be an inner universe Easter egg. So for example, in Assassin's Blade, when Selena meets Dorian and Chaol at a ball, they don't say that, but it's kind of a fun Easter egg. So I'm going to highlight anything that's within the Throne of Glass universe that's kind of an Easter egg that maybe you'd only catch on your second read. Anything in turquoise or aqua is a Maasverse crossover, so that's going to be the scene where Aelin is falling through time and space and potentially sees the city of Lunathian and also sees Feyre and Rhys. And then anything in like this kind of like neon greeny color, I don't like that color necessarily, but it stands out and it's going to be something that ties potentially to a theory or a conspiracy about the Maasverse. That's going to be a really interesting one. An example of that is how Maeve and Morgan are both the same person in like folklore. And so there's this theory that Maeve and Morgan might be connected. They might both be Volg. Like that is a theory. That is a conspiracy. I don't necessarily put 100% stock into it, but I still think it's pretty cool. But anyways, enough yapping. Time to start reading. I love the map. Just being back in this world. I feel like I'm appreciating the map so much more. I also, hot take, but Assassin's Blade was one of my favorite books in the whole series. I thought the novellas were so fun, and this is a really important book. There are some people who do not read this book. There are some people who say you don't need to read this book. That's like crazy talk to me. So I finished Assassin's Blade, and unfortunately I am filming this like way after the fact because I went to go edit this video and somehow, somewhere, someplace, I lost my Assassin's Blade clip. which is really, really sad, but it is what it is. And to be honest with you, this is one where, as much as I loved this book, most of my thoughts about it probably won't come into play until talking about later books in the series, because this is all just like a little bit of a prequel, and the real big connecting points will take place in later books, especially once we get through Queen of Shadows. I think that's when we really start to see all these characters. Some of these characters like Rolf and Ansel do get mentioned in Heir of Fire, which I think is pretty cool. And I didn't pick up on that the first time that I read this series because I read this after Heir of Fire. I didn't even know to look out for it in Heir of Fire. But other than that, everything else, when it comes to these characters, it was just kind of like a cozy read. I think all of my in-depth thoughts about them will take place in later reviews. But I gave this 5 stars. This still continues to be one of my favorites of the series. Obviously, the 5 stars of Assassin's Blade is nothing compared to the 5 stars of Kingdom of Ash and Empire of Storms, but I still had a great time. Honestly, just the overall feel of like Aladdin and Pirates of the Caribbean and everything in this, I love it, had a great time. I think my favorite plotline in this is when she's in the Red Desert at the Assassin's Keep out there. I just really loved that particular part of the world. We really don't get to see it any other time to the depth that we do here. I also think the Master of Assassins in the Red Desert is just, obviously he's way kinder than Arabin, but it was really interesting to see 2 sides of the same coin when it came to an assassin master and how they treated their subjects. I have a hard time generally getting behind Selena and Sam's romance, and I felt that way the first time I read this. Like, I love them, they're so cute, they're 16 years old. Like, it's very much like first love. From what I'm remembering, that's kind of the point of this, is like first love, puppy love, and then second love is the love that teaches you something, and then the third love is the love that sticks. And I really kind of enjoyed that romance arc throughout this, but I don't know, I think I just never got the experience of not knowing what was gonna happen to Sam. So the emotional impact of this was the same as the first time I read it. Like, obviously we know what's gonna happen to Sam. It's devastating, it's heartbreaking, and there's a lot of context there that is necessary for Selena and Aylin's character growth overall. It just didn't feel the same to me as what I remember Chaol and the Rowan romance as being. I did really enjoy the sneak peek at Dorian and Chaol's like little cameo in this. A lot of people just did not catch that Dorian and Chaol are in Assassin's Blade. Everyone says the first time and the only time that Aylin met Dorian before Throne of Glass was when she was like 8 years old and he went to her castle in Terrasen, but that's actually not true. She met Dorian and Chaol again at the ball. Page 282. 4 young men wearing masks stood atop the steps surveying the crowd. The dark-haired youth was the ringleader, and the fine clothes and mask they wore marked them as nobility. The masked strangers swaggered down the steps, one of them keeping close to the dark-haired youth, Chaol. That one had a sword, she noticed, and from his tense shoulders she could tell he wasn't entirely pleased to be here. That's Chaol. But the lips of the ringleader parted in a grin as he stalked into the crowd. Gods above, even with the mask obscuring half his features, he was handsome. She twisted to see sapphire eyes gleaming at her. So a lot of people didn't catch that Dorian and Chaol go to this party, and they actually meet Selena before Throne of Glass when she's taken to be Otterland's assassin. I just thought that was a cool little tidbit. That's like one of my favorite parts of this whole book every time. And I did catch on to it the first time I read it because I read this so late in the series. I was able to piece all of that together. I also really enjoyed seeing Irene's character from the beginning. The first time I read this, I completely dismissed Irene's character. If you were to tell me to recall any story in here, it would not have been Irene's. But obviously she's such a pivotal character later on in the series that it was nice just having a refresh of her and kind of her character arc in the beginning. I also love Lysandra, and so seeing little tidbits of Lysandra in here, even though she's snotty, still love it. I love it. Again, overall 5 stars. No real thoughts because all of my like theory thoughts and thoughts on these characters will probably come more into play in the later books in this series. Okay, hello friends. Finished Throne of Glass. I'm just blown away at how different my reading experience is this time around of this series. I'm speechless. I gave this, you can check my Goodreads, I gave this 1 star the first time I read it. I know, we're not gonna talk about it. 4.5. This was really good. I still like Assassin's Blade a little bit more, only because, I don't know, it's just so like Pirates of the Caribbean, Aladdin. I love it so much. The adventures, such a blast. But this was really, really just so fun. Dorian and Kale, baby Dorian and Kale. Oh my gosh, they are literally the sweetest. Since I'm buddy reading this series with a couple people, I had to ask them, like, based off of Throne of Glass, are you a Dorian girl? Are you a Kale girl? And they're both Team Kale, and honestly, me too. I just can't pick. Like, it's a why choose situation for me. I adore Dorian and I love Kale. Their characters are so different, and just seeing like baby Dorian, like before, like Dorian is not a man in this book. He is a princess. Like, let's be honest. Throne of Glass Dorian is a softie. He just is like living his best life, and he even says being around Selena makes him feel like a man for the first time in his life. He feels like he goes from boy to man around her, but it's very clear he is definitely a boy. I still just don't understand how Kale is captain of the guard for two reasons. One, he's in his early 20s, and two, he's never anybody. How do you become captain of the guard, the royal guard, by not offing anybody? Were there just no threats? I'm confused. Like, I'm pretty sure it gets explained later, but I remember reading it and I still was like, it doesn't really check out. Like, I just don't understand. But either way, eating it up, love him. Love the banter between Kale and Selena. Like, they have a love-hate relationship. Dorian just has like a love relationship with literally anything that breathes. But Kale, you really have to like really get below the surface on him. And he's a hard to read character, which can make him seem unlovable. But I love him. I love him. What can I say? You can't help but love Dorian, but you have to choose to love Kale. This is a free country. I'm free to choose to love who I want, and I choose Kale and Dorian. Like, can I just have them both, honestly? Look up the Pinterest fan art of Kale, like first book Kale versus first book Dorian. Kale's in the lead, for sure. Later Dorian, because there are very distinct changes that Dorian goes through. Obviously, like, fan art of Dorian in the later books is superior in literally every way possible. It's ridiculous how yummy he is in the later books. But in the first books, Kale all the way, and I have no shame saying that. It was also really interesting seeing all the kind of like Vogue tidbits like scattered throughout this book. I'm using my key to annotate this, so obviously this was like, look at that. I mean, really kind of went hard on the annotations on here, but I used like a dark black tab to mark like any appearance of something that feels Vogue-like, so I can go back and like easily find them in the later books, because I want to see like the Easter eggs and how everything developed. I just could not get over the eyes. The eyes of Dorian and the eyes of his father, they always say, I wonder, I have a theory, guys. So obviously your eyes turn pitch black when you're being possessed, basically, by a Vogue. And so Dorian has this scene where he says, I don't know who I get my sapphire blue eyes from. I don't get it from my mom, and clearly my dad has black eyes. So where does it come from? And we know that Elena has, is that her name? Whatever. I think her name is Elena. We know that Elena has like sapphire blue eyes, and she became a Haviliard, so we obviously know that like the lineage, he gets it from her. But why do I have a feeling nobody remembers that Dorian the First also has sapphire blue eyes? You just can't tell anymore because he's basically had pitch black eyes all of Dorian's life. Anyways, that's just a theory. I'm waiting to see if it gets confirmed in Kingdom of Ash, which would be really, really interesting to see like if they have each other's eyes, which would just be so heartwarming and just such good closure for that moment where Dorian is basically like, I don't know who I look like. My mother, my father, I don't look like any of them. Why not? And I just feel like he looks like Dorian the First. You just can't tell because his true eye color is being like covered up. And I don't know why that means so much to me. Like, it's just eyes, Heidi, get over it. But the amount of times that eyes were mentioned in this book is kind of ridiculous. So it's hard to not pay attention to it. So anyways, I am going to be starting Crown of Midnight now. I'm nervous. I cannot tell you that I hated a book more in my entire life than Crown of Midnight. I literally don't remember anything about it. It was so boring. It was kind of scary. And Mort, I don't get it. I don't get it. Mort made an appearance in Throne of Glass, the little skull knocker, which I thought was pretty funny. So like the Easter eggs are there, but overall like Mort was just such a Deus Ex Machina appearance that did not need to happen. It's just when you know to look for it, Deus Ex Machina resolution emotions and characters are just so frustrating because they make no sense, but I'm gonna give it grace because I know she was young when she wrote these. And just based off of how much I really enjoyed this after giving it a 1 star, I'm hoping that I have the same experience with Crown of Midnight. But I'm gonna shut up now and I'm going to start on Crown of Midnight. Wish me luck. You can really tell I did not care about this book the first time around because the spine isn't even broken. Look at this. Like, I literally did not care. Look at this. Did I even read this? Couldn't tell you. It doesn't even open. There's no floppiness to this at all. I must have really hated this book. Going in. This scene, so Selena comes back with like the severed head of this like lord, and Dorian is like thinking she's a totally different person. Did she have me fooled that she liked me all along? Meanwhile, Chaol says, are you still acting like the King's Champion or are you back to being Selena? Of course Chaol would notice the difference. He noticed everything. They're just connected in a way that Dorian isn't at this point, but I will say Dorian like loved her from the start. So they just, the relationships that they both have with her truly are so different. She did a really great job of developing 2 very different kinds of love. And then he said, I thought that they caught the killer. I thought that they meant you and I was about to head out to look for you. She said that would explain why Chaol's horse was being saddled up when she arrived. So sweet. Oh, and now he's hugging her. Fleetfoot. So she's having this dream about Cain, and this is technically book 2. A lot of people won't have read Assassin's Blade at this point, and he whispers her name, her true name. I don't know, like I really feel like it was obvious as soon as they mentioned who Aelin Galathynius is and that she went missing or whatever. It's so clear, just based off of like this Easter egg alone, that Selena and Aelin are the same person. Now, I don't really remember when Aelin gets brought up for the first time, but I just remember getting to that part and I was like, oh, it's Selena. And I feel like I mentioned this before, but I feel like it was very obvious from the beginning, even before I knew Aelin's name, that Selena was not who she said she was and that she was like under a fake identity. So we just met Roland Havilliard. How do you guys say it? Havilliard? Havilliard? I think it's Havilliard. I think I said it wrong earlier, sorry. I even did the audiobook, I should know this. Anyway, so we meet Roland, and I know Roland appears later with like the witches. Selena's like uncomfortable around him, and then he says, His Majesty offered me a position on his council. I start work today. She describes him as having an oily grin and roaming eyes. I'm gonna see if like they mention having dark eyes or a ring around his appearance, because I'm trying to figure out if he's Valg at this point or if he's just like a piece of shit. Today was one of those work days where I was like, I have to go outside and touch grass or I'm going to lose my mind. So I decided to read outside in the backyard, which I haven't done before. I live in Texas, so usually it's like 5 bajillion degrees, which makes reading outside not fun, especially with no pool. And I'm not technically on the grass. I'm on a blanket on the grass because you also don't want to touch Texas grass. It is brown, it is crunchy, and there are fire ants. So we're doing the best with what we got. Teddy's out here hanging out with me, living his best life. I did read a little bit more of Crown of Midnight yesterday, and I am having a much better time this go around. Something that I caught this time that wouldn't have made sense, I don't think, if you weren't doing a reread, was the snowstorm that happens kind of in the beginning of Crown of Midnight. So Dorian's getting like really jealous and really upset that Selena is choosing Chaol over him. And there was like this one point where he just like lost it, and he and Selena had this argument in the hallway and she walked off, and all of a sudden that night a blizzard ripped through Rifthold, and it was like a blizzard like no one had seen. And it's not commented on, But then a couple chapters later, Dorian wakes up. He's like, my bedroom is really cold, and he woke up and there's like frost around him. And so I'm thinking that the blizzard that ripped through was like him and his anger. And then like a couple chapters later is when Nehemia says like, you have a power within you, don't be afraid when it awakes and everything. But like the snowstorm happened well before we're supposed to know that Dorian has any kind of power. So I think it was like a little nod and like a little Easter egg that he has. There's a lot more to him than meets the eye. But I just thought that I was like, the moment I saw the snowstorm, and there was like comments about like, this was like a snowstorm that they had never seen. It was a really unexpected snowstorm for like that season. Like, it's for sure Dorian losing his temper. For sure. He's such a diva, but I love him. Also, he only wears a red cloak, which again, I feel like is another nod to like Manon and just that whole relationship. I just love it. I love it so much. Look at this guy.
What are you doing? Oh my goodness. What are you doing? Come and sit. Thank you. See, look how nice that is.
Hi friends, we did it. We finished Crown of Midnight. It was so good. I don't know if you can see, but look at all those tabs. I had a much better time the second time around. Like I said, this was like a 1 or 2 star read. The first time I read it, I don't know why, but the first time I read this book, Mort annoyed the absolute crap out of me. This time, like Mort was like barely relevant. I don't know. Maybe I just was in a really weird fantasy funk the first time I read this series, but I'm having so much fun this time around. But I gotta say, I'm still, like after reading this, I'm still Team Chaol. I don't really understand the hate around Chaol's character, even after finishing this book, because usually this is the book where people start to decide they're not really about Chaol, but I liked it. I don't know. Don't come for me. There's this line on page 218 where Chaol had just gotten captured. The captor goes, oh, she's just one girl. And Chaol says, you're really in for a surprise. It reminds me of that. She's just one girl. That one girl is kicking our ass. I highlighted it. I thought that was so funny because it's literally so Aelin Galathinius, Selena Sardati encoded. Even after reading this, I kind of forgot that Nehemia died this early in the series. I'm gonna be honest, I just don't care. I feel like we didn't get to see enough of Nehemia for me to really feel super attached to her one way or the other. And there are a couple other characters that this happens to later on in the series. They meant a lot to the characters in the book, but as a reader, you didn't really get to experience them to the fullest, and so they don't necessarily mean a lot to you as a reader. This happens in Crescent City, and I'm pretty sure it happens in the next book or the book after. There's a specific character in mind in this series where like we get a glimpse of her and then she's gone. At least that remained the same. Like I wasn't like emotionally invested in the tragedy that was kind of the point of this book. While I enjoyed this and gave it 4.5 stars, there's still a lot of it that looking back, I don't see how it contributed to the overall story. I understand the significance of the clock tower, but the creature that was like living in the library, I understood the Ritterak a little bit more than I understood the creature that they discovered living in the library, in the tunnels, in the clock tower. It just kind of felt like this like whole side quest that really didn't contribute to the 8-book significance of the series, if that makes sense. I think ultimately it was just trying to show that the king was experimenting with things. It felt a little bit too dragged on for how very little of importance it seemed at this point in the series. I did really enjoy the development of Dorian's magic, just starting to be introduced to characters that are very minor but will definitely come back later in the series. I really enjoyed that. We also got a little Lysander name drop in this book, which I loved. She's my favorite. I cannot wait for her to finally make an appearance in this series. You know me, you know Lysandra, she's my girl. I feel like a lot of people give Chaol hate for 2 reasons. They give Chaol hate because they think he's responsible for Nehemia's death, which literally makes no sense because guys, Nehemia did it to herself. We get that. Like Elena says, I told Nehemia to do this. So it's not like I don't understand. Like, why are we hating on Kaol? It's not his fault. And to be quite honest with you, here's what I don't like about when people give Kaol so much hate. Kaol was such a good man to Celaena. He even says to Celaena on page 394, Fae or assassin, no matter what you are, he was gonna say I love you, but she cut him off. He's so accepting of her. People say Dorian is the one that loved Celaena at every point of her, you know, transformation, but that was Kaol. Kaol says, Fae, assassin, I love you either way. And he's the one that sent her away for her own protection. He told Celaena after the fact that he accepted her no matter what she was, even though she was a direct contradiction, not even knowing who she really was. Her being Fae is a direct contradiction to his orders from the king, and he told her I love you either way, and then sent her away for her protection. And if that doesn't convince you that Kaol is not a terrible human being, Celaena even forgives him. She says on page 413, I'd still pick you, I'd always pick you. And she's basically saying, even though you're a child of Otterlin and I'm a child of Terrasen and Fae, I would still pick you. Like, you are actually not my enemy. I didn't mean what I said earlier. I understand hating Kaol for a moment when you think that he's responsible for Nehemia's death, but at the end of the day, he was so good to her for so much of their story together, and he made one mistake, and that mistake was just doing his job. But you can forgive Nesta, who was terrible for literally Feyre's entire existence, and then had this redemption arc at the end, which I love Nesta, by the way. But it's the idea that, like, you can hate a character so much, and then she has this redeeming storyline, and then you forgive her, but Kaol gets a whole book to himself just like Nesta, and you still can't forgive him? Come on now. Like, Celaena even forgives him, and she forgives him in Crown of Midnight. It doesn't even take her to Kingdom of Ash to forgive him. Anyways, I have very strong opinions on Kaol haters and the hate that Kaol gets. You're entitled to your own opinion, but I think there's so much to his character, and also comparing him to Dorian is not fair. Dorian and Kaol they're barely even the same species. Dorian and Kaol are not meant to be compared. Yes, they kind of have this like love triangle initially, but they're also best friends, and they're also really good men. I just think comparing a character who is troubled with magic and a character who is troubled with human flaws, it's just, they're very different, and they're both still so flawed and so relatable. Like, that's the whole point. They're supposed to make mistakes. Even the best men in the world make mistakes. Even the best women in the world make mistakes. For all the hate that Kaol gets despite his redemption arc, I just think that Lysandra and Nesta and even Bryce, these characters who are extremely flawed and you feel like you need to hate them, they get this redemption arc, and Kaol gets the exact same redemption arc, but people don't appreciate it as much just because he's a man. I don't know. I don't really like that. I think his character is so complex, and Tower of Dawn is still one of my favorite SJM books. I think it's extremely underappreciated for what it is. That's all I'm gonna say, but this was a much more pleasant read the second time around, and I've actually already started Heir of Fire. I couldn't wait, so I'm actually about 65 pages into Heir of Fire, and I thought I'd read a little bit with you guys. I just want to say, I did not realize, is that supposed to be Rowan? I thought that was a crow. I just was looking at this, I'm like, oh, it's Rowan. Also, the pine trees, pine and snow. I don't know why I didn't put two and two together that this is Rowan, and like, if that didn't clue me in, the pine trees, like, come on, Heidi, how did I not pick that up? When I tell you the scream I scrumped when Rowan finally appeared, I was so excited. I love Rowan so much. And again, another character who has this redemption arc. Lorcan also has this redemption arc. I'm so excited. This is really when I started to absolutely love this series the first time I read it. Heir of Fire was 5 stars for me the first time I read it. It's not the same kind of 5 stars that Kingdom of Ash is, but at that point when I was reading this series, I was like, this is exactly what I thought the series was gonna be. It just took 4 books to get here. So I'm really excited to finally be picking up this book. The only thing I've been frustrated with, and this goes for the whole Throne of Glass universe, the map is of Aurelia, which I understand, and we get Otterlin, and then it has this little arrow here and it says to Wendlin, but we don't actually get a map of Wendlin, and the fact that she spends so much time in Wendlin, I just feel like we should get another map. Like, it's not fair. And then the Tower of Dawn, there's just a little arrow that says to the southern continent. I would love to see what the southern continent looks like. I would love to see what Wendlin looks like, but no. Part of me kind of has this theory that Wendlin is Prythian. I don't really know why, But for some reason, maybe that's why we don't see it, is it's the same world, just different timelines. And that's why. Beats me. I have no idea. It's just kind of one of those outlandish theories that I have. But we have officially met Maeve, and I don't freaking know why I didn't see it sooner. Like, she's clearly not who she says she is. They made the comment of her having pitch black eyes. Why didn't I see that the first time I read this? But Rowan is such a savage. Oh my gosh. I'm obsessed. I'm so giddy. Like, even though I punched her in the face, like, yeah, she was kind of being a little brat. I just love it. Like, true enemies to lovers. And she's about to start training. That's about where I am right now. I'm so excited. Okay, I'm gonna get to reading because I've been talking for way too long. Also, look at, I have a new jelly cat. He's so grumpy. He is Rowan level grumpy. Like, come on. His name is Timmy, but I did name him Killian because he kind of has the grumpy face of Cillian Murphy, and I'm obsessed. Oh yeah, I have the little, oh my gosh, wait, look at this. The happy little raindrop. Are you kidding me? Look at his belly. Are you kidding? He's so freaking cute. I'm obsessed with him. Oh, and we've met Manon. It's pretty awesome. Good morning. It is Sunday morning, so I have no plans today. It's gonna be a reading day. I am exactly 200 pages into Heir of Fire. Loving it so far. Like, easily a 5-star read. Reading this makes me want to re-rate all the books that came before it lower just because this is so good. Like, I understand that the whole series is a 5-star series, obviously, but I also have a hard time giving every book in a series 5 stars just because, like, the overall series was good. And it's just so hard giving this 5 stars knowing that it's still not as good as the 5 stars of Kingdom of Ash, and it's 1000% better than all the 5 stars that came before it. So I'll need to figure out a new rating system for Throne of Glass. I'm loving the relationship between Rowan and Aelin developing, and we're just getting a little bit more to her background. It's just been really interesting. We finally met Aedion. Aedion in this book doesn't bug me yet. Aedion later on just really gets under my skin. Aedion gets under my skin the way that Chaol gets under a lot of people's skin. I don't know. I don't think that's ever gonna change for me. I think I'm just gonna like permanently hate Aedion. I need to make a cup of coffee. It's early, but let's keep chatting. Also, this is my absolute favorite mug. It's my Salem mug. I think it's so cool. If anything ever happens to this mug, I truly will be devastated. One of the things that I love about Heir of Fire is just starting to get a sneak peek into Aelin and Rowan's relationship. So I have this theory, and everyone is like, how is Rowan not able to tell that Aelin was his mate and vice versa? Like, Maeve just must have like really messed him up. But in my opinion, I don't really feel like it's that off, because in ACOTAR, Rhys isn't able to recognize Feyre as his mate until Feyre completely leaves behind her mortal being and she completely becomes Fae. And if you look at Rowan and Aelin, it's kind of the same thing. She's really stuck on being Selena and not Aelin, and Rowan is trying to push her to fully accept her Fae form. But not only does she almost always exist in her human form, but she really rejects every part of her Fae self. So when Rowan first meets Aelin, of course he doesn't immediately recognize her as his mate, but also there is this part when he first meets her. It's like on page 20 or something. It's so early in this book. He first meets her and she looks at him and she could tell he's breathing in, and she's like, he's smelling me, but he's not smelling the grime that's on me. He's smelling like the essence of who I am, the bloodline, etc. And if you know anything about Rowan, you know Rowan has this really peculiar gift at being able to smell people's bloodlines. He knows who Aedion is, he knows who Lysandra is, and he immediately knows who Aelin is. And I have a feeling that that moment when he breathed in and he starts to look at her funny, and then every time she mentions her lover, he gives gives her this funny look. I think he's trying to figure out why he's drawn to her and why she smells a certain way, even though he feels like he already had his mate. But she's stuck in her human form, so obviously those senses aren't as strong. But when she's in danger, like with the skinwalkers, he's automatically there. He's protecting her as a mate would, even though he hasn't actually realized or accepted that he's her mate, and vice versa. The signs were already there early on. There's also this scene, I need to make coffee while I talk. There's also this scene where they're talking and suddenly they stop talking, and Aelin has this thought in her head. Rowan answers it out loud. I feel like that's like a little sign of like their mating bond, because she was able to think something and Rowan still responded. She thought that maybe he was just like reading her mind, but I think it has something to do with their bond. I forget if it gets brought up later in the series. So like everything that I'm saying right now, maybe it gets released like later on and like revealed. I just have completely forgotten. But I just have this feeling, oh, okay, so back to the bloodline thing. In Crescent City, there are these fae, and I think they're also part werewolf. I can't remember if they're like part of the wolf packs, but they're the bloodhounds, and they're able to really like sniff out your like heritage. They know who you are, like they are like bounty hunters of Crescent City. And I'm starting to wonder if Rowan has the same skill, and if that's how he actually like recognized sooner than we believe that Aelin and him were connected somehow. I don't know. Not to mention the fact that he also bit her in a moment where he's trying to get her to become fae. He loses himself and bites her. And you could tell he's actually pretty ashamed by this. He like doesn't really let on, but he says you don't bite another male's woman. But if you don't bite another male's woman, you only bite a woman that you think is yours. And so he bit Aelin thinking in that moment that she was his. And then the fact that his bite is what triggers her to become fae and accept her fae form in that moment and shift is crazy to me, because it's like her body was realizing you just got bit by your mate and you have to accept him in a form that is compatible with his. And so she shifted. I don't think she shifted from fear, and I don't think she shifted from anger that he was like calling, like she felt weak and like a coward in that moment. When I tell you I love this book, I love this book. Also, Manon just picked Abraxas as her wyvern. I almost cried. That scene where he's just like getting mauled by Titus and he protects Manon and she's like, he's mine, you are mine. And he gives her a look like, witchling, I chose you. I love it. I love it. I have a really ambitious goal of finishing this today. I would love to get this video posted pretty soon because we're now officially about 4 books in. That's kind of as much as I wanted to read for part 1. So hopefully we will get a pretty decent chunk of this done. I have 300 pages left and I have no plans today. So really, I have no excuse. So it is one of those beautiful times of the year in Texas where it's just raining and thunderstorming non-stop, day and night, lightning, showers. I love it. Everything is green and everything will be green for the next month. And I just plan to enjoy it while it lasts. It is the perfect weather to have a reading day and cozy up with a coffee. So I'm so excited. This is gonna be a great day. What are you doing? It's okay. So Aelin is like smiling at like these male fae, and they're all just like looking at her really confused and wondering why she's smiling at them. And Rowan says they've been keeping their distance because of the scent you put out, because your scent says that you don't want to be approached. The males smell it more than the females. I actually feel like they smell that she has a mate and that she was bit by her mate, and they're just like, should probably stay away. It has a lot more to do with her connection with Rowan and his scent on her than it has to do with her smelling unapproachable. Just a theory. They say pit bulls are the most dangerous dog breed on the planet. I can promise you, the only thing dangerous about them is their breath. You are stanky. Yeah. And their attitude. They have to be touching you non-stop. If you do not want a clingy dog, do not get a pit bull. You want a dog that's gonna Velcro to your side and love you forever? This is the breed for you. It's nearly impossible to read about 2 pages without getting interrupted by my child, AKA, you better not, first of all, you just belched in my face. Second of all, you are not allowed to stand on Rowan Whitethorn. Pause off my book, mister. Do you wanna... Go on, go. Go. Okay, I'm officially 300 pages into Heir of Fire. When I say I actually feel like sick reading this book, and in the best way possible. Hi, Daddy. And in the best way possible, like I am so overjoyed and excited to be back in this world that it's making me like giddy and I have butterflies and it's like just that like, hi, Daddy. It's just like that sickeningly like, feeling. I don't know. Hi, buddy. How can you explain this feeling to people who don't have dogs? Get you a best friend who loves you as much as this guy loves me, and I promise you'll never need anything else. Look at his little face. Hi, hello. Especially Rowan, I'm so excited to be getting to know his character again. I feel like it's been so long. I truly didn't think anybody was going to top Rhysand for me. I read ACOTAR first, and then I read Crescent City, and Hunt is cool. Like, it didn't really do anything for me though. And then I read this, and I just, like Rowan, he came so close to replacing Rhysand. And now on the reread, I think he officially has. Like, I love Rowan. I don't know what else to say. And I just love watching him like come out of his shell around Aelin. When I tell you, I giggled and kicked my feet when he got her to shift and they were racing through the trees. They ran like 20 miles and he was like nipping at her and like pushing her to move further. I'm like, he's literally flirting with her. Like, he's smiling, he's excited. And she has this moment where she's like, Rowan is playing. He's playing like a kid. Like, he's like almost just like a puppy. Like, it was, oh my gosh, it was just one of those like warm fuzzy moments, one of the few warm fuzzy moments that you get in the trauma that is this series. I'm very interested though in the creature that lives under the mountain. The way that they described this big creature, it's like kind of like a dragon, but kind of not. And then it lives under the mountain. It's cursed to live there. It's locked in the mountain for as long as the mountain stands. And it's locked in this labyrinth. They described it as a labyrinth of underwater tunnels. And it sounds a lot like in Crescent City 3 when Bryce and Nesta and Asriel bring that like skeleton back to life underneath the mountain, and there's like a labyrinth of caves. And I'm just wondering if it's the same mountain. A lot of people have this theory that Throne of Glass, ACOTAR, and Crescent City take place on different worlds, which very well may be. As of right now, pre-reread of the whole Maasverse, I'm erring on the side that it's all in this same world, literally, just very, very far apart. This creature that lives under the mountain here could be the skeleton that is under the mountain in Crescent City 3. Kind of irrelevant right now, but I just like, I'm seeing pieces like that, and it's just part of one of my theories. But I just finished part 1. I'm about to start part 2. This scene of Rowan telling Aelin how he lost his wife, and then he says, maybe we could find our way back together. I wanted to cry. And then she says now that she understood in the weeks that she'd been looking at him, it had been like gazing into her reflection. No wonder she had loathed him. They're cut from the same cloth. And then she says together, and somewhere far and deep inside her, an ember began to glow. Are you kidding me? Teddy, are you hearing this? It's amazing. I love Emrys, the old man working in the kitchen. He literally calls out Rowan. He says, makes no difference to me whether your ears are pointy or round or what your teeth look like, but I can't deny I'm glad to see you got a few punches in this time. And Rowan looks at him like, what the fuck? I thought that was so funny. And then Emrys says, don't you think you've had enough of beating each other into a pulp? You think any of us like to hear you two cursing and screaming every afternoon? And Rowan lowers his head and mumbles something into his stew. He's like literally embarrassed. And I wonder, Emrys is a mated male. And I just wonder if he knew. Like he knew immediately Selena was Aelin, even though she was going by her name Alentia that Nehemia gave her. And I just have a feeling like not only does he knew immediately that was Aelin, I feel like he has a feeling that Rowan and Aelin are mates. Just from reading in the Maasverse, you just know that the Fae are very in tune to each other's mates. They know when they've come across a mated male or a mated female. Everyone in like ACOTAR knew that Rhys and Feyre were mates. Feyre just hadn't accepted the bond, but they could still sense it. And it's the same thing here. Obviously, Rowan and Aelin both haven't accepted the bond, but I have a feeling everyone can still sense that there's a connection there, especially when she's in her Fae form. It's just very interesting to me. I just love seeing all the pieces to come together. I love seeing Rowan let his guard down. She's seeing snippets and like small moments where he doesn't defend Maeve and he kind of just stays quiet about it all. I love it. I love this so much. It's like making me ill mentally, physically. I love this series so much. Teddy, you will never know what you're missing, will ya? Hi friends, little reading update. I definitely don't think I'm going to finish tonight because I have work in the morning, and as much as like I think I could stay up all night and finish this, tomorrow me would not be happy. So it is so adorable how Rowan and Aelin are literally pining for each other and they don't even know it. It makes me sick. I just want them to be together. It's not fair. On like the little festival day, Beltane apparently is what it's called. Weird name, but whatever, Sarah, moving on. Aelin is saying like she caught a few admiring glances thrown her way by visiting males, but then they looked at Rowan and immediately looked away. And she did catch a few females looking at him with far warmer interest and she wanted to claw their face off for it. It's so dramatic. And then it says, maybe it was just from spending so much time in her Fae body that she felt territorial and grumpy and mean. Last night she had growled at a female who would not stop staring at Rowan. How did, like, for those of you who read this the first time, like, did you have a feeling? Were we supposed to know that they were mates? Oh my god, it's just so good. Then it gets serious because obviously then she like starts heading towards her burnout and she's just like really stressed that she's going to burn people, and Rowan remained beside her murmuring as if she were a nervous horse. He's so doting. He's like obsessed with her and he doesn't know why. And then she says, I'm sweating to death, I'm starving, and I want a break. And he goes resorting to whining, but then a cool breeze licked up her neck. Like he's taking care of her even though he's trying to be a hard ass. He starts like realizing that she's burning out and he picks her up anyways, carries her burning body, puts her in the water, pulls her out, and like literally just takes care of her. She said if she hadn't known better, she might have thought he was fussing. The way that men dote in Sarah J. Maas books, it literally makes me sick. Rowan is my favorite. He's for sure number one book boyfriend. Number one. It's not even close. Rhysand is second, but Rowan, the OG Silver Fox. And then she turns 19 and he brings her chocolates because he's offended that her only birthday gift was getting a break from him. He's in love. He doesn't even know it. Oh my god. When he sees her scars, he literally saw her scars and was like, who did this to you? Turns into his hawk form and flies away. And the first time I read this, I thought he was just getting like a breather, like because he was upset. No, he was flying to Maeve. He was flying to Maeve and was about to give her what for, but then he realized if he cracked in front of Maeve, she would forbid him from like through the blood oath from ever seeing Aelin again. And he realized he couldn't do that. So he literally was like going berserk. He was gonna go full alpha male on Maeve. Luckily, he's a smart boy. He turned around, and then he takes care of her for like a whole week. Sleeps in bed with her, holds her hand, and she wakes up and he's still holding her hand. Mr. Darcy level pining, guys. It's not even funny. Everyone just stop writing books. This series is it for me. Okay, so we finished Heir of Fire last night, which officially means we are halfway through this Throne of Glass reread. This is just going to be a part 1 because I like to chat and I like to talk theories and everything about this series, and it's kind of hard to do when you're rushing through. So there will be a part 2 with the tandem read and Queen of Shadows and Kingdom of Ash, obviously. So I honestly was planning on spreading out like the reread over a span of like probably 6 months. But honestly, after finishing Heir of Fire, I am so beyond excited to get into Queen of Shadows. I love this book. I love this book. Rowan Whitethorn, the man that you are, the way that his character arc inspires her character arc, I'm obsessed. The last 100 pages in this book, not only does so much happen, but we also get a lot of info dumping. And to be quite honest with you, I missed a lot of the significance of the Mark of Brennan. Nameless is my price, and kind of all of that information the first time I read this. So it was a really good refresh. I was really interested in the kind of flashback that Aelin has while the Volg are kind of picking around in her brain while she's trying to protect Mistward. And we get that snippet from her childhood, and I love seeing snippets of like baby Aedion. Even though Aedion like later on in the series really kind of annoys me, I do think that there's still a lot to be said about his character, so I appreciated kind of getting that humbling moment where you remember he's just a kid and he went through the same trauma that she did in a lot of ways. And I love the part where baby Aelin notices that Dorian is like lonely. She said he expected to be neglected for the rest of the night, and he looked lonely enough that she said, if you'd like, you can be my friend. And not one of the men around them laughed. That's so sad. Like, poor Dorian. And then Dorian says, I have a friend. He is to be the Lord of Aniel someday and the fiercest warrior in the land. Oh my gosh, that was just heartwarming. But it is really interesting to kind of see early effects of the King of Otterlin and the way that he kind of triggered her outburst of wildfire. It was just beautiful seeing parts of her parents that we really just, I mean, it's a whole part of the story that we are missing. And unfortunately, like, unless there's some crazy Maasverse crossover, we're really probably not going to get any snippet of Ro and Evelyn as in like any kind of time travel. So these memories are all we really have of them. I really loved seeing their relationship, the way that they'll do anything for their daughter, even though they kind of disagree on what the best thing for her is. And then the way that her mom's water magic was the only thing that could subdue her daughter's fire. Something about that is so significant, I feel like. I'm very interested to hear y'all's thoughts on this. I'm not sure if this is a crossover that's been mentioned, and let me know if this is a theory that's already been like come up with, but I haven't seen it. But they're talking about the amulet of Orinth. It's at the bottom of page 459, and it says the heirloom honored above all others in their house. Its round disc was the size of her palm, and on its cerulean front a white stag had been carved of horn gifted from the Lord of the Forest. Between his curling antlers was a burning crown of gold, the immortal star that watched over them and pointed the way home to Terrasen. I'm very interested in her distinction between horn, my Crescent City bells are ringing, and antlers, because obviously he's a stag, the Lord of the North. They have antlers, they don't have horns. The amulet is carved of horn and it's sacred, and it's a gift from this kind of ethereal being, which is the Lord of the North. Is there any connection? I can't make the connection. I'm seeing signs, but I don't know what the linking point is, but is there any chance it's like the same thing? The horns? I don't know. Just an idea, but that definitely caught my attention. I definitely had tears in my eyes reading about Lady Marian's sacrifice that she made, and it was Aelin's first understanding of what sacrifice was, which Aelin makes a lot of sacrifices later, and you can't help but wonder how much of that she ties back to Lady Marian, even though she admits that she kind of blocked Lady Marian and the memory of her out because she felt guilty. But I'm also interested here, the assassin chasing after her. Do we ever find out who he is? And how did Arobynn coincidentally find her? I feel like there maybe isn't like a connection there, but for some reason it just is like too coincidental. The assassin was riding a horse, and it says the hoofbeats were so powerful they seemed to echo through the forest. The horse had to be a monster. And I'm thinking, okay, the horse is either an Astarion, because we know that they're absolutely insane horses, or it really was a monster. And I'm just interested if we ever like find out, was it a monster, or is that just like her childhood memory? Looking back, it felt like it was a monster. So I was like almost crying with Lady Marian, but then the scene on page 467 where she starts to see images of like everyone that she's lost and everyone that she loved, her parents, her uncle, Lady Marian, her young self, Sam, and they're all telling her, get up. The Vogue are getting frustrated because she's having this like powerful, positive memory, and that doesn't work for them. And I'm chills right now just talking about it, but they're just like, get up, get up. You can do it, get up. And they're saying it with so much love, and then the Vogue take it and they twist it, and then all of her loved ones start saying these terrible things about her, which is all of that fear kind of coming to the surface. But little Aelin is laying right next to her, still reaching for her, and she's the only one saying, get up, get up, and just smiling at her. Why is that so moving? And then she says she was not afraid, and obviously that's a nod to Sam. But the way that Rowan freaked out when he saw her go down by the Vogue, and Gavriel and Lorcan held him back. But then she says, to whatever end, and he says, I claim you, Aelin Galathinius. Like, I love them so much. Honestly, their relationship could have been completely platonic the whole series. I would still die for them. What a beautiful story. Obviously, they couldn't be platonic because her platonic relationship is with Fenris, and we would not have the relationship between Aelin and Fenris if Rowan and Aelin hadn't taken the step towards like romance in their plot lines and ended up being mates. So I'm very thankful that they ended up taking the romance route, because otherwise we wouldn't have the relationship we have with Fenris. But still, that's how much I love them. I don't really care like about the romance. I just care about their love for each other, and that to me is different. I have a theory though, okay? We know that the bodies that the Vogue princes were inhabiting were demi-fae or people with magical powers, because their bodies were a little bit stronger and they had better capabilities than inhabiting a human body. And then let's talk about General Narek, keeping that in mind. She looked to Narek standing so still, watching and waiting, because she had already killed the other princes. Suddenly a spear of black punched into her head, offering one more vision in a mere heartbeat, not a memory, but a glimpse of the future. The sounds and smell and look of it were so real that only her grip on Rowan kept her anchored in the world. And she could have sworn that the blackness in Narek's eyes faded, could have sworn that his eyes became a mortal brown, and that gratitude flickered for just a moment, then she burned both Demon and Narek to ash. I have a theory about Narek. I think Narek is a seer. They mentioned it earlier in this series that seers were extremely rare. People with ability to see into the future were extremely rare. Not only do we know that Narek had to have some kind of demi-fae power at minimum in order for a Vogue to inhabitate him, but also Vogue only have the power to feed off your fear, and your fear comes from your memories and your past. They don't have the ability to fabricate a future. And we know that he gave her a memory of the future, but we don't know what it is yet. Later, it's on page 512, we find out the vision Narek had given her as she burned him. He had known. Somehow he had seen the potential, as if he'd figured it out while the Vogue princess sorted through her memories. And she's talking about Narek the person, because remember she said she burned Narek and the demon inside him. So when she's referring to Narek, she's talking about the man that the Vogue prince was inhabiting. It was not a future etched in stone, but she did not let her aunt know that. She yielded the memory as if it were truth, which means it's a prophecy, like what a seer can do. She says she did not see that the vision had been given to Selena not to taunt her, but as a warning of what she might become if she did indeed find the keys and keep them. A gift from the man Narek had once been. So he gifted her a vision of what her future could become if she held on to the keys, which means he has prophetic powers. I don't know if that goes anywhere, but I think that is pretty solid confirmation that we know that Narek had to have been a person with magical capabilities, and he gifted her the sight of future for a moment, and he figured it out while the Vogue were picking through her past memories. The man was figuring out something about Aelin and her future. I just thought that was so cool. Again, I don't know if it comes into any relevance later. I just think it's so cool seeing like snippets of magic when you don't think that there is magic being used. The phrasing of this kind of shocked me, but when the Wolf twins transition, Aelin calls them the most beautiful men she had ever put her eyes on. We know that Feyre says that about Rhys, and I'm very interested, like one is light, one is dark. Why are they so polar opposites if they're twins? I think we get the answer later. I feel like we get an answer of why Fenris and his brother looked so different. Fenris and Connell, I think is his name. I can't quite remember, but it's just the fact that she uses the same language that Feyre used when describing Rhys is very interesting. Also, guys, Not gonna lie, pretty sure Rhysand is Vogue because Maeve is described as having violet starry eyes. Come on. Now, I don't stand on the side that Vogue are inherently bad. I think that there are bad Vogue. Him being part Vogue doesn't really, I don't care. Like, I still love Rhys. There are a lot of comparisons and theories that Rhys is Vogue because of like the claws in the mind, which we know the Vogue do, but also like his monster form. We know that Maeve's form isn't necessarily like her Vogue form, it's her Fae form. So she transitions into something else. It's just very interesting, but definitely I'm seeing a lot of connections there. Yeah, she turned her violet starry eyes to Selena and give her a spider smile. Very interesting to me. And even Maeve says there are many different races of Vogue, creatures that even your darkest nightmares would flee from, and they are ruled by the princes. There aren't many princes, but I once witnessed an entire legion of Fae warriors devoured by 6 of them within hours. Definitely there's some possibility that the princes of the Vogue are also some of the princes that we see in Midgard, in Crescent City. Like I said, there's so much info dumping, not even in the last 100 pages, but in the last like 50 pages of this book. It's kind of crazy. But then when Maeve breaks the blood oath, which obviously we know Maeve had her alternative motivations to do that. Listen to this line. Rowan rushed to her, his hands on her cheeks, his brow against her own. Aelin, he murmured, and it wasn't a reprimand or a thank you, but a prayer. Aelin, he whispered again, grinning, and kissed her brow before he dropped to both knees before her. By the way, he probably kissed her mark, which is really, the mark is like nameless. The mark is like the mark of Brannon, which means you are unclaimed. And he kisses her brow, like, and I just take that as like him claiming her. And he's ready to give her the blood oath. But then, okay, I don't know if you could see it here. All of this in yellow, this is their inner dialogue. This is when like Aelin and Rowan are just like looking at each other and they're having this conversation. Like, it's clearly that, like, I understand, like, you can give somebody a look, like, come on. And they're like, what do I mean? Like yes, that is a wordless conversation. But to do that, a whole freaking paragraph of dialogue where they decide to become bloodbound? No way is that just a wordless conversation. Y'all are connected, clearly. Oh, I love it. He says, I claim you, Aelin, to whatever end. Together, Fireheart, we'll find a way together, a court that will change the world. What a man. What a man. What a king. Anyways, but then let's finally, in the end, talk about Sorsha. Chaol had a conversation with Sorsha and he said, I truly believe this kingdom could use a healer as its queen. Very similar to what Aelin said to Irene, the world needs more healers. And Sorsha was thinking about it and she said Dorian needed a true queen if he was to survive this. She could not be queen for there were limits to her bravery and what she could offer. What incredible foreshadowing for Dorian and Manon's relationship and their reign as well. Dorian needs a true queen and we know Manon is that. I cried at this one. Chaol looked at his friend, perhaps for the last time, and said what he had always known from the moment they'd met, when he understood that the prince was his brother in soul. I love you. Dorian merely nodded, eyes still blazing, and lifted his hands towards his father. Brother, friend, king. Oh my gosh, and you're telling me you hate Chaol? You missed this chapter. He also said, I will not serve you a moment longer. There is one true king in this room. There always has been, and he is not sitting on that throne. So obviously after Sorsha, the scene where Dorian is literally trying to piece her body back together, he's trying to put her back together. There wasn't even anything that intense in Game of Thrones. That is extremely dark and extremely devastating. And they're about to clamp the Wordstone collar onto his neck, and he wrenched his arm free from the guards, not to cast magic, but reaching and bellowing, and he had just touched Sorsha's limp hand when cool stone gripped around his throat. He was still reaching for her. It's so good. Okay, so that's kind of my final wrap up of Heir of Fire. I already want to start this series over. I'm devastated because it just gets better, but it also just gets worse. And I'm not ready. But this was so easily a 5-star. And actually, now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I loved the other books in this series, but giving any of those a 5-star or anything close, it just feels wrong. Like, I am happy giving Heir of Fire a 5-star and have it up on the pedestal with Kingdom of Ash and with a couple other books in this series. But Putting Throne of Glass and the first 3 books, comparing it to this just doesn't do it for me. So actually, before we wrap up, I am going to be re-rating these. So Assassin's Blade, I'm going to give that one a 4.5. Throne of Glass, I'm going to be giving a 4. And Crown of Midnight, I'm going to give a 4.25. I still really enjoyed all of those, but none of them live up to the 5-star that Heir of Fire is to me. Truly, I have no regrets when I say I still think that this is one of my favorite in the series. Obviously, I still have more to come, but this was just such a good time. Read it in a couple days. Probably could have read it faster if I didn't want to savor it so much. This is one I could find myself just like picking up sporadically and rereading and not rereading the whole series. I really, truly love this book. This has been a lot of fun. This is my first official reading vlog, and I just thought rereading the Maasverse in general, especially Throne of Glass, would be such a fun idea for this reading vlog. So I am going to cut it off here, and I'm going to do a part 2 where I'll probably read Queen of Shadows, the tandem read with Empire of Storm and Tower of Dawn, and Kingdom of Ash all in one. We'll see. It could get a little bit long, but my plan is to do it all in a part 2, and I'm planning on already starting that pretty soon. But thank you so much for tagging along. If you're watching this, you've probably already read all of these books because obviously this video had spoilers. If you heard any theories that I talked about in this video, or you think I missed any theories, drop them in the comments. I want all the tea. The only person I'm able to talk to about my theories is ChatGPT, which is a lot of fun and it's kind of hilarious. ChatGPT is like so down with the Maasverse theories, but I want to talk to real people about it. So if you have any fun ideas or theories or just details you think I would enjoy or you want to share that you came across on your read, please drop them in the comments below. But thank you again so much for watching. If you're not subscribed, please do before you leave and like this video. It helps my channel grow. I'm just getting my feet under me, but I'm having so much fun in this book community, and I can't wait to see you all for my next video. Love ya.